Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Gabriel. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm Executive Director at the National Women's Hall of Fame. I'm honored to welcome you to today's program, Brunch, with the Dolores Huerta. We have asked all our speakers to provide a visual description of themselves to aid any of our visually impaired audience members. So to start things off, I'm a white woman with shoulder-length brown hair. I'm in my mid-40s. I wear glasses. I am sitting in my home office, which has yellow walls, and there are photos of sunflowers behind me. Since this program is virtual and we have folks joining us from all over the world, I'd like to share with you a video showcasing the National Women's Hall of Fame and our beautiful home at the historic Seneca Knitting Mill in Seneca Falls, New York. Thank you for joining us today for what I know will be an incredibly inspirational event. We hope to see you again in the future. Welcome to the 1844 Seneca Knitting Mill, home of the National Women's Hall of Fame. We are the first and oldest nonprofit organization dedicated to celebrating the achievements of great American women. We currently have 293 inductees whose stories inspire us and must be told so that all people of all genders across the nation understand their contributions to our society and our nation. In September of 2022, we will induct another class of 9 incredible women whose contributions and stories will stand the test of time. And we are launching programming that seeks to inspire people across our nation and around our world. Our home is in the historic 1844 Seneca Knitting Mill, which has stood as a beacon of hope and inspiration to generations of people. There's something magical about standing in our building and looking out to the banks of the Cayuga-Seneca Canal and really understanding on a deep level how important that waterway is to our entire nation. The canal was a driver for so many important conversations, and Seneca Falls was a major hub for the flow of information and for the exchange of ideas that allowed for important movements to begin, from abolitionism to the women's rights movement. Our mission and the work we do is further enhanced because of our ability to call this historic building home. The Seneca Knitting Mill is one of the few surviving mills in this area, and its history is deeply intertwined with the mission of the National Women's Hall of Fame. For 155 years, the Seneca Knitting Mill produced woolen goods. Owners and management did not want to support slavery, and they made the decision to not use cotton for any of their products, and instead sourced wool from local sheep farmers. This was also one of the only businesses that employed women and immigrants, so it was a place for advancement, empowerment, and achievement. In fact, 2 of this building's original trustees attended the first Women's Rights Convention. We consider it a privilege to steward such a historic treasure. In the months and years to come, and with the generosity of donors, we will continue our work to renovate this building, expanding our exhibits and gathering spaces into the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors. Our museum and gallery space will be a pilgrimage site for people across the world to visit and feel energy, excitement, and inspiration from the stories we tell about the incredible achievements of our inductees. Storytelling is how history comes alive. I think about the little girl in Wyoming, the little boy in Maine, the professional who wants to change careers at 55, the new father who is raising triplet girls, the teen who is struggling to tell their parents they are transgender, the grandmother who wants to leave this world a better place for her family. The National Women's Hall of Fame has a place in inspiring all of these people and inspiring you. This is a great time to get involved. Join us.
Hi, folks. Thank you, Jen, for such a warm welcome. My name is Natalie Rudd, and I'm the Learning and Engagement Manager here at the National Women's Hall of Fame. And I'm going to be your MC for the evening. My visual description, I am a white woman in my late 20s. I'm wearing a black and beige button-up with brunette hair styled into 2 buns. And I'm sitting in an office at the National Women's Hall of Fame, which has white walls, brown table behind me, as well as a poster that states our mission, saying showcasing great women and inspiring all. As we position ourselves to host Induction Weekend in September of 2022, we are creating programming like the Week of Women that focuses on themes that tie the work of and priorities of our 2021 inductees. This Women's History Month, the Hall decided to experiment with a new program called the Week of Women. The catch was that our Week of Women was going to take place during the first week of April. Through a series of panels, workshops, events, and the program that you're at today, we are exploring a wide range of topics that are relevant to our work to host the accomplishments of great American women like Dolores Huerta. And by hosting it in April, we hope that we can reinforce and share with you all that celebrating women's history can be and should be every single month, not just in March. Today, we're going to be joined by the absolutely incredible Dolores Huerta, co-founder of the United Farm Workers of America. 1993 inductee Dolores Huerta is one of the most important and influential labor movement leaders in history. Dolores is a civil rights activist and community organizer. She has worked for labor rights and social justice for over 50 years. In 1962, she and Cesar Chavez founded the United Farm Workers Union. She served as vice president and played a critical role in many of the union's accomplishments for 4 decades. In 2002, she received the Puffin Nation $100,000 prize for creative citizenship, which she used to establish the Dolores Huerta Foundation. The Dolores Huerta Foundation is connecting groundbreaking community-based organizing to state and national movements to register and educate voters, advocate for education reform, to bring about infrastructure improvements to low-income communities, advocate for greater equality for the LGBTQ community, and create strong leadership development. She has received numerous awards, among them the Eleanor Roosevelt Human Rights Award from President Clinton in 1998. In 2012, President Obama bestowed Dolores with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States. And before I hand the mic over to this incredible woman, I have a few housekeeping notes. We will begin our time together with a short talk from Dolores, who will tell us more about her life and career from her own perspective. And then after, Jennifer Gabriel will join us again with Dolores to host a moderated Q&A. And then following, we will host a live question and answer session. You can submit your questions using the comment box on the right-hand side of your screen or below in the comment section. Let us know where you're coming from, what you're thinking, and any questions you have for Dolores. Today's live stream should be equipped with closed captioning. You should have the power to turn those captions on or off using the closed caption button at the bottom of the video screen. If you experience any technical issues during the live stream, I highly recommend completely closing your page and then rejoining with the same link. We are using technology today that is very new to us, so we apologize in advance if there are any errors that do occur. And that being said, today's event is being recorded, and all registrants will receive an email with a link to the recording. If you would like a copy to this recording and you aren't sure if you registered or not, please email us at admin@womenofthehall.org. That email will be put in the comments as well, so you can have it easily. And we'll add you to our mailing list. Afterwards, we'll be sending the link as well as any resources we talk about in today's chat. And you'll be asked to fill out a brief survey telling us about your experience. This is all super helpful information for us as we try to grow and improve our virtual programming. And today's event is free for all to watch. These virtual events are critical for our mission at the National Women's Hall of Fame of showcasing great women and inspiring all. And this includes making all of our events accessible for all learners, especially those with limited physical abilities and or a lack of financial means to join us. So please consider making a donation to the National Women's Hall of Fame as a not-for-profit institution by visiting womenofthehall.org/donate or clicking on the link in the event description that we'll put in the comments in just a second. Please show your support. Every dollar helps. If you enjoyed today's program and want to learn more, consider signing up for our newsletter or follow us on social media at womenofthehall.org. We are on every social media platform, including newly on TikTok, where you can learn more about women like Dolores in a very fun and uplifting, lighthearted way. That's enough housekeeping, enough of me. Let's turn it over to Dolores now. I'm going to bring Dolores on stage, and I will hand it over to her. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dolores. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I'll identify myself. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a Latina woman, and when I say that, that is kind of a mixture. My grandfathers on my dad's side were from Mexico. On my mother's side of the family, we go back 14 generations in the state of New Mexico. On one side of my family, we're indigenous. On the other side, my grandparents on my mother's side also were the first immigrants to the United States, which of course came from Europe. Both from my great grandmother, one of them was from Spain, and one of my great grandfathers was actually, his family was from England. So I am your typical American mix. I also, by the way, I am really proud to say that I am a board member of the Feminist Majority Foundation, and two of our board members are in the Hall of Fame, Peg Yorkin and Eleanor Smeal. And as you mentioned before, the founder of the United Farm Workers. I am very, very happy to be invited to speak here today because, oh my gosh, we have so many things that are happening around the women's issues right now. We are spotlighted sometimes in not a very good way because we know that right now women are struggling to try to keep Roe versus Wade, trying to keep women's reproductive rights in place, which we know right now are under attack in states like Texas and other states in the South of the United States where they're trying to criminalize a woman's right to abortion. And of course, this is something that we are not going to let them get away with because we know that unless a woman can control her own body, then she cannot control her life. She cannot control her career that she needs to work on for the rest of her life. And today, I believe it's today, if not this week, that President Obama is going to be at the White House. His first time since he left the White House, he has come back and they're going to be celebrating the Affordable Care Act, or as many people call it, Obamacare. And of course, this was so important so women throughout the United States of America could have health care. Although we know it's still not the type of health care that we should have, like they have in other countries, like in Scandinavia, parts of Latin America, where people have universal health care. And even a teeny country like Cuba, where every citizen in Cuba has free health care, which we do not have in the United States of America. But we know that this health care is really important for women. And when we talk about women's reproductive rights, well, that is a healthcare issue. And not only that, but then we have the issues with our mental health also, which is also a very big issue. That's really come to light now after the pandemic. But when you think about healthcare, when women have to face sexism and misogyny, that is also a healthcare issue. And when we think of what's happening to our LGBTQ community, where you have, again, laws that are passed like in Florida, where they're saying don't say gay. I mean, really. And, I do want to share a phrase with all of you because I think we all know some people who are not yet enlightened and do not understand the issues of reproductive rights or gay rights. And this is from a man, a Mexican president of Mexico, Benito Juarez. And he had a great saying. He said, and I'm going to say this in Spanish, el respeto al derecho ajeno es la paz. That means respecting other people's rights is peace. So we have to respect women's decision if they decide to have 11 children, like I did, or like my daughter Juanita, a former teacher who decided not that she doesn't want to have children, but she loves dogs and cats, which I'm sure there's a lot of people in our audience today that feel the same way, that they would prefer to have dogs and cats. So we have to respect those decisions. And so I want to just share that phrase with you, and I'm going to say it again. Respecting other people's rights is peace, because we know that those issues, I'm not going to call them the haters, they use those issues of women's right to abortion and people's decision to marry someone of their own sex, if they so choose. They use those issues to divide us. And we cannot allow that to happen because we have so much work to do, especially as we get women to take power. And Coretta Scott King said that we will never have peace in the world until women take power. And that's what it's all about. It's about us getting women in those positions of power. I'm happy to report to you that I'm sure a future member of the Women's Hall of Fame will be Patricia Guerrero. She is the first Latina to be appointed to the state court, the state Supreme Court of California. And then, of course, we are all waiting to celebrate the first Black woman who will be on the Supreme Court of the United States of America. So that does show that we are making progress. But again, to fulfill Coretta Scott's statement about we will not have peace in the world until women take power, we know that we have to do a lot more work to get women elected. And right now, I think we're about 35% in the U.S. Congress. We are one of the few countries that has not had a woman president, although we kind of tout ourselves thinking that we are so progressive, but actually we're not. So we have to do a lot more work to make sure that we have more women elected to all of our bodies, be it school board, city councils, commissioners, board of supervisors, and of course, the U.S. Congress, and especially the U.S. Senate, where we're way, way short of having women representation. And I like to say if there is some kind of a decision-making board meeting somewhere in the world, if we do not have 50% of the people that are sitting on that board to make the decisions, they are going to make the wrong decision, okay? So that's why it's really upon us that we have to work very, very hard to get more women as representatives in the decision-making bodies of the world. And so it's kind of up to us as women to get out there and make sure that we engage, that we recruit as many people. And by the way, I'm going to use the word feminist. I'm going to use the word feminist because we know that there are many men out there that are feminists and that they support women's reproductive rights and all of these other issues that so affect women. So we just got to get out there and do as much as we can. In my organization, the Dolores Huerta Foundation, what we do is we do grassroots organizing. We have meetings in people's homes, little by little, maybe 6 to 8 people. I like to use the word Tupperware, like a Tupperware party. And we have a meeting. And then out of that meeting, we get another meeting, and then another meeting, and another meeting, until we are able to organize a group of people to come together. Then we decide what issues do they want to change in their community. Then we make an action plan, and then everybody, they have to volunteer to do the work. And that's where the leadership grows. And we have some amazing, amazing women. Many of these women are immigrants. They never went to high school or college. They speak very broken English, many of them. But you know what? They have such incredible leadership. And I want to give you just one example. We had this one woman, her name is Leticia Prado, an immigrant from Mexico who speaks very little English, but she became one of our volunteers and in her community, they had a big concern. I am here in Bakersfield, California, and this is where a lot of the oil for California comes from. And our air is so polluted that children could not go out for recess in their middle school. So what Leticia Prado did, once she learned that she could engage in the democratic process, she and her fellow neighbors went out there. They went door to door. They got petitions. They passed a bond issue, and they built a brand new state-of-the-art gymnasium for their middle school. The gymnasium is so great that actually there are schools from the city of Bakersfield that go to this little town called Wheat Patch. Okay, that's where it's at. Wheat Patch, by the way, that's where The Grapes of Wrath was filmed. And then she got so excited after they were able to pass that bond issue to build this middle school that she decided to run for the school board. She got herself elected to the school board, and at that time, the principal of that school district decided that that they were going to eliminate the breakfast program for farm worker children. Can you imagine? So guess what? They got rid of the principal and they kept the farm worker and they kept the breakfast program for the farm worker children. So this kind of shows you the power of women, what they can do when they get in office and they get out there and decide to change the world and improve the world and make the world a better place. And that, of course, is our battle cry for all of us feminists, that we have to do whatever we can to make the world a better place. So thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to having a conversation and having some questions from all of you. Si se puede, yes, we can.
Thank you, Dolores. That was incredible. That was such a powerful and touching beginning to this conversation, and really looking forward to some of the questions that we were being asked on the live stream. But I have a couple for you to get us started for myself. So you have influenced and inspired generations of people that have seen your work, gotten inspired by it, gotten engaged. And I'm wondering, who has inspired you the most in your life and why?
Well, I can really name three people. I think my mother, number one. My mother was a businesswoman, and she always kind of pushed me to be out there in front. My mother was an incredible cook, an incredible homemaker, but somehow she didn't pass on those gifts to me. She said she always had me going out in the public eye. I was a Girl Scout for 10 years of my life. So my Girl Scout leader, and her name was Catherine Kemp, was a great influence on my life. And I want to say one other person, well, two other people. My best girlfriend, Charles Satterfield, who was African American. And I was so blessed to know Charles. I was very fortunate that I grew up in an integrated neighborhood with people, immigrants from Italy, from Greece, from Mexico. We had children from the Philippines, Japan, and China. So I like to say I got my ethnic studies from my friends. This is where I learned about other cultures, and so that prepared me very much for the world. And then I met there's two other persons. One of them I mentioned, Eleanor Smeal, who has been inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame, because she helped me kind of work through the whole issue of reproductive rights for women and the right for women to have an abortion. Because as a Catholic, I had all of these other beliefs that abortion is a sin, you're going to go to hell, whatever. But Ellie and Gloria Steinem, both of them, really made me understand why it's important for women to have that right to abortion. And that was very, you might say, life-changing for me, because then I can talk to other women about this and make them understand that politicians use this issue to divide us. That and the gay marriage issue, they use that to divide us. And that's been very important for me in terms of reaching out to women in communities of color, especially Latinas, to make them understand that these are political positions that the haters used to divide us. And then, of course, the person that taught me how to organize, his name is Fred Ross Sr. And I maybe someone in the audience may have heard about him, but there is a book about him called The Social Arsonist. But he's the one that taught Cesar Chavez, myself, and many, many other organizers how to do this grassroots organizing that I mentioned earlier, about meeting with people in their homes, talking about the issues, making them understand that they have to commit to make the changes, the improvements that they want to see in their lives and in their communities. And if they don't do it, it's never going to happen. That they can't sit back and wait for somebody to come in, somebody on a white horse that's going to come in and save them. No, they have got to challenge the issues, work on the issues, and make the changes. If not, it will never happen.
And what a great segue into what was my next question, which is what is a piece of advice or several pieces of advice that you would give to a young activist or organizer who wants to get more engaged but doesn't know where to start?
Well, we have the perfect opportunity in this year, 2022, because this is a year of elections. And the best way to get involved in the political process is to go out there and volunteer for a campaign. Go out there and register people to vote. talk to people that you don't know, strangers, and explain to them why it is so important for them to get engaged in the democratic process, because that is what voting is. And especially now when we see that our democracy is threatened, there is no time like the present we have to become the freedom warriors to save our democracy. We are seeing what's happening in Ukraine right now, where people are fighting and dying to keep their own president, to keep their own government. And we see that Russia is trying to obliterate them just so that they can take over their country. Well, we have seen that in our own country, we have the haters that are coming out there, and they are trying to take control of our government. And we can't let that happen. But the only way that we can save our democracy is that each and every one of us has got to engage.
Yep, well said. So I want to remind our audience to please drop your questions into the chat box. We will be taking audience questions in just a couple of minutes. So please feel free to ask anything that you might be thinking as you listen to Dolores's incredible history and story. I also want to mention that we have learned that the closed captioning has been problematic on YouTube this morning for some reason. So we will add closed captions to this after the event. So the recording will be available for those who need that assistance. So Dolores, I am wondering, you talked a lot about legislation and some of the really big topics of conversation that we are having as a nation and also in Washington. And I'm wondering if you had control to be able to pass one piece of legislation right now that you think would make the biggest difference, what would it be?
Well, I would say the Equal Rights Amendment for women, which we know is stuck in the U.S. Senate. Again, when we talk about democracy and we think that there were only maybe 2 or 3 votes that kept us from having the Equal Rights Amendment, which would be the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And a lot of people don't understand that there are only a handful of countries that have not voted for the Equal Rights Amendment, and that the United States of America is one of them. I mean, that is shameful to think that our country, the most powerful country in the world, does not have the Equal Rights Amendment for women. And here it is in the U.S. Senate. Then we have these other laws that do have to mention them about having accessible daycare for our children. This is, again, a law that would really affect women. And yet, again, that one is also stuck in the Senate, along with the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill, the pre-college tuition, 2 years of college tuition that would help so many women, low-income women, to be able to go to college. And so, again, this really points out that we've got to get more involved in the democratic process to make sure that we elect people, and just to make sure that we get the type of legislation that we need.
Thank you. And so now that we've talked about the present, I'd love to go back in time for a second and talk about, you got involved in a lot of these movements and a lot of these conversations in the 60s. And I'm wondering how you've seen activism and organizing change over time, and what has sort of stood the test of time, and what have you seen that's actually maybe was true as a great tactic then and is not necessarily true now, or vice versa. Just some of your thoughts around the evolution of the movement.
Well, I believe it's a lot easier now because young people, you have your devices that you can message and you can get information out very quickly. We have Google, where everything can be very transparent. We can mobilize very quickly, as we have seen in the marches and the Me Too movement and immigrant rights movement and the Black Lives Matter movement. So the devices have really made it so much easier that we can accelerate the organizing process, you might say. But the one caution I do want to say, especially to young people, is because sometimes they get very impatient. And it's great that we march and that we protest because that way we bring the issues to the public, like the Occupy movement, which started spotlighting the issues of the fact that 90% of the wealth of the United States is in the hand of 10% of the wealthy families and corporations. But the one thing that young people have to understand is it has to be put into a law. If it is not put into legislation, that means it won't be implemented. People cannot be held accountable if these laws are not enforced. And so that's why we really have to make them understand how the whole legislative process works. And it starts, of course, with voting, and we have to elect people that are progressive, and then we have to stay on top of them to make sure that they vote the right way. And this is the way that we make laws, and then to make sure that the laws that we pass are enforced. And then of course, and also in voting, we really have to make sure that the people we are voting for are who they say they are. And we have a good example with Kristen Sinema, who is one of the people whose votes we needed for the Equal Rights Amendment and for Build Better Act. All of the things that we talked about that we didn't have that are stuck in the Senate. So we have to be really informed to make sure that we get the laws passed that we need.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you stay personally motivated and not get frustrated by the slow process, because I think that's one of the problems that we all face in trying to create change, is that we want it to happen quickly, and it doesn't always happen as quickly as we want. And as you said, so much of it needs to be really done through legislation and through laws that are passed. So talk a little bit about where you find your own inner strength and any advice that you have for other young activists who do feel that sense of frustration.
Well, I would just say look towards the past and see where we are at now, and know that everything that we have is because people in the past fought for what we have today. And so we know that the legislative process does work. The democratic process does work, but it doesn't work unless all of us engage to make it happen. And the more of us that are involved in the electoral process of voting and passing laws, et cetera, then we know that we're going to be able to win. Yesterday I spoke at a college, and I asked the audience how many of them knew who their state representative was. Not one hand was raised. Not one hand was raised. We could ask the audience right now, how many of you know who your state legislator is, your state senator, or your state representative? How many of you know who your congressional representative is, your congressperson, or your senator in the U.S. Congress? Because this is what we have to learn. And by the way, we have to incorporate this into our curriculums, to civic studies, so young people start understanding why it is important for them to know who their representatives are, because our taxes pay them to work for us. And if we don't even know who they are, I mean, that does not sound well for all of us, because the people that we elect are the ones that make the decisions of how the resources are going to be spent, how much money is going to be coming into our community, what local law. Let's take our school boards, for instance. We would love to have our school boards make sure that we have women's history, that the National Women's Hall of Fame is taught in every single school, so that young women can get that empowerment to know that they are important.
Yeah, and what a wonderful segue to what I think is going to be my last question before we turn it over to our audience questions. You've been involved with the National Women's Hall of Fame since you were inducted in 1993. And I'm curious, as you envision where the organization might be able to grow and expand its reach over time, what ideas do you have for ways that we could be more in classrooms across the nation and hopefully living rooms across the nation as well?
Well, I believe that could happen very easily. But again, going out to all of the different school boards across the country and start small, of course, so that the young women can learn about who the inductees are and what they have done. And I think that would be very important. I mentioned that I was on the board of the Feminist Majority Foundation. And by the way, this year is the 50th year anniversary of Ms. Magazine. And so we could use that also as a segue to talk about the National Women's Hall of Fame. So I think that would be so important. I imagine that we might be able to get some funding for that, to be able to put that into. Now that everything is done virtually, it's so easy to do that. And the other thing I would just ask is, I was the first Latina, inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame, and I would just appreciate it if every single year when we induct people into the Women's Hall of Fame, that we also always include a person of color.
Yeah, we are absolutely aligned with you on that. It is incredibly important to us that we not only honor women of color who are present day great Americans, but also looking at some of the historical gaps that we have that we can help fill and tell the stories. Because you're absolutely right. It's the stories of our inductees that are what inspires certainly personally me every day, but also anyone that interacts with the organization. So this is great. We've actually got quite a few of a question, sort of different iterations of a similar question. So I'm wondering if you could give us your take on the recent unionization of the Long Island Amazon factory. What do you think this means for the modern day labor movement?
Oh, it's so important. And then we always have to remind everyone that so many of the laws that we have today, benefits that we have for working people, they were brought to us by labor unions, by the sacrifices of labor leaders. We talk about the 8-hour day. If I would ask everyone here, how did we get the 8-hour day? What happened to those labor leaders that fought for the 8-hour day? They were executed, they were hung, and we do not even know their names. But without labor, we would not have the 8-hour day. We would not have weekends. We would not have Social Security, unemployment insurance, disability insurance, public education. These are all of the benefits that working people have that were brought to us by labor leaders and labor unions. And a lot, again, as people are so ignorant about the contributions of women to our history, they are also ignorant of the contributions of labor leaders. And labor unions actually create the middle class of the United States of America. And if we do not have a middle class, we do not have a democracy. This is how inherently important labor is to our society.
Great. Thank you. So we've got a question from Sarah B. My grandparents were farm workers who benefited from Dolores's work. What does she think the future of unions what does she think the future of unions is in our country with our changing economy?
Well, as I mentioned before, our unions are a vital part of our economy. And when we can think of an organization, this is what a labor union is. It's an organization and so the workers of that organization have some representation, not only on the job to protect them from unfair practices by the employers, but also to represent them in the community and in our state legislators and in the U.S. Congress. So this is how vital labor unions are for the country.
Wonderful. Gabrielle has asked, we are currently working with, it sounds like she's currently working with a local union to unionize staff at her organization. My question, how can we help amplify the voices of color involved in the union process so that they feel that their voices are heard?
A lot of people don't understand what a labor union is, and they have kind of been smeared by the employer community to make it look like labor unions are a special interest. Well, labor unions represent the working people of the country. The working people of the country are the majority of the population of the country, so they are not special interests. And all of the support that labor unions can get into a community is very, very important to sort of erase that image that labor unions are bad. Wait a minute. As we just said, all of the benefits that working people have today came to us because of the sacrifice and the martyrs. You know, even in the United Farm Workers, we had 5 people killed. In fact, in Florida, they were just memorializing Nan Friedman, who was the first martyr. She was a young Jewish girl from Boston, and she was the first martyr of the United Farm Workers who was killed in the sugar workers strike there in Florida. I think last Sunday, they just memorialized Nan Friedman for contributing her life to the movement of the farm workers. And we have 4 other people that were killed. After Nan, it was a young Muslim, Naji Daifala, who was killed here in Kern County because he was fighting for the rights of farm workers. And we had 3 other martyrs that were killed just to get basic benefits like toilets and drinking water, the right to have a union. You know, we lost these people who gave their lives poor farm workers.
Wow. That's powerful. I want to give a warm welcome to Kristen S., who is actually hosting a Heritage Spanish class right now. So her students have all joined us and have a couple of questions for you. What is one piece of advice that you can share with young Latinas?
To get involved, this is my mantra, my message for everyone in this important electoral year that we have in 2022. There are many, many elections that are going to be taking place. So I just want to say to everyone out there, especially the young people, please get involved in a campaign. This is how you learn the political process, by canvassing, going door to door, talking to strangers, getting them to register to vote, asking them to get involved in voting. And so, because our democracy will not work unless everybody participates. And especially now that we have so many critical elections that are happening. Many of us saw the hearings that were heard for our new Supreme Court Justice, the Black woman, Jackson Brown. And I'm sure that many of us were upset. I have to say that when I saw those hearings and the way that she was treated, it was like a verbal lynching that they were doing to her. I was ready to pack up and move to Texas and start organizing to get rid of those senators that were so abusive to her. So we know through the democratic process of voting again that we can change the Senate of the United States of America that is now keeping us from having the ERA and all of these important issues that we need. So it's just a call to arms, I think, for all of us right now, that we have to save our democracy. And the only way we can do it is through voting. Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that the ballot is more powerful than the bullet. The ballot is more powerful than the bullet. The other thing that we have to do is start fighting to get women's studies into all of our classrooms so that we can end the misogyny and the sexism that is directed against women. And the other thing, too, is we all have to engage in being anti-racist. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that racism is an illness, it's a sickness. Misogyny is a sickness. Homophobia is a sickness. So these are the things that we have to work very hard to get rid of, these isms that we have that are making our society sick and creating all of the hatred. And that hatred translates itself into violence, like the 23 people that were killed in El Paso, Texas, because they were Mexican. And the majority of those people that were killed were Mexican-American citizens of the United States of America, or the Asian women that were killed because they were Asian, or the Jewish people that were killed because they're Jews, and the continual assassinations of our young men in the Black community, So this has all got to be part of our struggle. And again, let's look at those school boards. Let's get ethnic studies into our classrooms, and get women's studies and the gay studies into our classrooms, so we can start ending all of the hatred that exists in our society that is keeping us divided.
Yeah. Let's see. This is another question from the class. Did people within the group ever doubt your cause because you're a woman?
Well, very often, as we all know, as women, and especially women and people of color, and again, as we get older, we get the thirdism, ageism that is directed at us. And so we as women have to be really, really strong and have that faith in ourselves and trust in ourselves, and not let other people, kind of minimize who we are or discriminate against us, and learn how to fight that and ignore all of the discriminations that are aimed at us.
And how difficult is that to ignore the discriminations? Like, have you found tactics personally that you have been able to employ that might be helpful for others to learn about, of how to kind of push out that noise and really be able to focus on what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, one thing I have to really thank my mother, because early on, when I was just very young and a teenager, she always told me, when people try to criticize you for what you do or what you're trying to help other people, ignore them. Just, put them out of your mind. Take those criticisms as blessings, as long as you know that you're trying to do the right thing, you're trying to help people. and you're not trying to hurt people, just ignore all of those arrows that are shot at you. You know, during the 60s, there was a book called The Yaqui Way of Knowledge, that everybody read that book. And there was one line in that book that I remember. And it said, when you become a warrior, then you can expect you're going to have a lot of arrows that are going to be aimed at you. So we just have to remember that. And as long as we are true to ourselves and true to our cause, then we can keep on working and not let those criticisms slow us down.
Oh, I actually got tears in my eyes as you were saying that. I think that's very, very true. Last question from the class is actually one that was written in Spanish. So I will, you can see it, but for our English listeners, I will ask, how do you feel about your accomplishments?
Well, because my accomplishments are on the backs of many other people, because when you're an organizer, what you do is you organize other people to do the work, and this is how the leadership grows. So any accomplishment that I have is because so many other people were working to make that happen. So I always feel very, very blessed when I am recognized, but I do know that it is on the backs of people like Nan Friedman that I mentioned, who was killed in that farm worker strike in Florida. And so I take those not only in my name, but in the name of all of the people that work to make whatever project that we're working on to make it happen.
Great. A question from Randy. I'm a Hispanic woman warehouse worker from San Antonio, Texas. What advice would you give to women who work in a male-dominated field and live in a culture and society that is still male-dominated?
Well, we have to try to educate the men, and I know that's not that easy. I mean, I in the Farm Workers Union, I was the only woman on the executive board for many, many years, and I had to fight to get more women on the executive board. The good news is we always see progress. Today, the president of the United Farm Workers is a woman. Her name is Teresa Romero, and the majority of the board members of the United Farm Workers now are women. So, we just have to, again, keep faith in ourselves. And when it's possible, educate men on when they say the chistes colorados, when we say those are kind of jokes that are aimed at about women, correct them on it. Tell them that, you are hurting my feelings. The same thing when they say homophobic remarks or racist remarks, we have to correct them. Because we have racism that exists in our communities of color also. Because sometimes people of lighter skin are treated better than people of darker skin. I do want to say this too right now. I think this is the moment, is people were introducing themselves and we were saying that we are white women. I just want to remind everybody, and this is really, really important, to end the racism in our society, we have to remember that we have one human race, only one human race, Homo sapiens. And our human race came from Africa. So you might say that you're a white woman, but your roots are African. And it's so important that we remember this, because in order to stop the racism in our society, we have to remember that we are one human race. We don't have a lot of human races. We have a lot of different cultures, a lot of different nationalities, but only one human race. And so we can say to all the white supremacists out there, the neo-Nazis, get over it. You're Africans, okay? And if we were there in person, I would say to you, take the hand of the person next to you on both sides, turn to that person and say, hello, relative. Then turn to the person on the other side and say, hello, relative. Just remember that and share that. That's a good conversation to take to your dinner table and say to the family, hey, family, did you know that we are all Africans? Okay. And that way we can end this idiotic issue of racism.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I think that's really a very important point, and for us as well to be thinking about as we do give our visual descriptions, to make sure that we are reinforcing that as too, and not creating more delineations, because you're absolutely right. Crystal has asked, how can young progressive female labor leaders in rural Midwest communities who are facing severe political divide in their communities cut the issues to overcome the party line division? It's a tough one.
Well, we have to just tell people the history. We can say that the haters are the ones that brought us the Iraq war. Okay. The haters are the ones that are attacking gay people in Florida. The haters are the ones that are attacking women in Texas and passing all these laws to criminalize women's right to abortion. Uh, Tell them what the history of the haters is. And so that way we can start educating people on which political party that they might want to belong to and the importance of them engaging in the electoral political process, because this is the only game in town. This is the only game in town. We saw that there was an insurrection where they were trying to stop the democratic election of the president of the United States of America. Explain to them what fascism is. Fascism is what caused the millions of Jews that were killed in Germany, and even the genocides that have happened in our own country. And we don't need to have this. This is why we have to have women take power, as Curtis Scott King said. Because but it's not going to happen by itself. But it's such a critical moment. And there are many elections. In fact, I have a friend of mine who just lost her election by 7 votes. 7 votes. We know in the state of Virginia, not this election, but prior election, where the whole thing changed by 1 vote. By 1 vote.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
So just a part of the electoral. This is our savior democracy. This is the dream that the founders of our government had. I don't say our country, okay, because our country was brown when all the immigrants came here, okay? But the founders of our government had this dream of democracy, and we are living it. We are living that dream. And I liken this to a football game. We have one team that shows up, the other team doesn't show up. Who wins? The team that shows up. So our team, our justice team, has to show up.
Wow, that's great. I'm going to go a little off script for a second because I do have a question that I'm wondering about, because you've touched on sort of the what I call the scary side of activism, which is the potential for violence. And we've seen that play out in several ways in the last few years, especially. And I know that you had your own experience of being attacked when you were protesting then. I believe it was candidate George Bush's policies. And I'm curious how you view violence and how you were able to overcome that to continue your work, knowing that that was something that not only could happen, but did happen.
Well, when I first met Cesar Chavez, I think the one thing that we had in common is that we had both read Gandhi, and we were very devoted to the issue of nonviolence. And when we started the United Farm Workers, we knew that almost every effort to organize farm workers had failed. And they had failed because of the violence that was, instituted at that time. So we said when we formed this union, it's going to be a nonviolent movement. And it was great because we did have people killed. And so we had to say to the farm workers, we're going to continue working and we're not going to react with violence. And that's the only way that we're going to win. And of course, it happened. And so I think nonviolence is a very, not only, it's a spiritual force. And it gives people that courage and that faith that you're going to be able to win, even if it takes longer to win. And that's the only way that you can win. We learned that during the 60s that there was a lot of violence and a lot of people were killed, a lot of people were hurt. And now we see a lot of violence that's happening also in our communities. And so we have to look and see how can we stop the violence, but not stop the work that we're doing. We have to continue the work and look at those methods of nonviolence that people can use. And I think that and the long run, and I think, by the way, that women are the best generals in the army. When you have in our army social justice movement, when we work through nonviolence.
So I think we have time for probably 2 more questions. Lisa has written in, my daughter is a 6th grader. She's writing a paper about how you use diplomacy skills to lead the farm workers' rights movement. What is your strongest diplomacy skill?
Well, I think if we see the people on the other side of the table or the other side of whatever project that we're doing, to see them as human beings and try to reach, points of agreement that we can agree on. And then from there, we can, go to the more contentious issues that we have to talk about. But trying to see them from their perspective, if you possibly can, try to get them to understand. I would, in my negotiations with a lot of the agricultural employers, because in California we have like agribusiness, it's plantations, and to make them understand the way that their workers were being treated, and so that they could kind of experience that as if it was happening to them, kind of paint a picture for them and to see what people are going through or what the issue is, and how they can relate to that issue, and kind of humanize and understand that we don't want to hate the other side of the table, but we want to get them to understand why it is that we want this particular issue solved.
Yeah, I think finding those commonalities is
Yes.
so critical, no matter what we're trying to accomplish. It really is a great tactic. Okay, finally, so Nash Levy, my 5-year-old daughter, Kasail, is a Girl Scout and is learning about you in kindergarten. Her first hero project is about you. What advice can you give her to become a leader and a powerful woman?
Well, we learned so much in the Girl Scouts. I was a Girl Scout for 10 years of my life. And just to be strong and not to be afraid, always use your voice, stand up for people. And another bit of advice that my mother gave me that I use to this day, and I know that this is also the mantra of the Girl Scouts, to be of service to others. And my mother always said, if you see someone that needs help, you have an obligation to help them, even if they don't ask you for help. And the other thing is, don't expect any kind of reward for the help that you give people or recognition, because if you do expect some compensation, then you are taking away the grace of that act that you did to help people. I think that's very, very important. And also, we mentioned this before, when people criticize you, don't let that stop you. And whatever project you're working on, keep at it, because the only time that you lose is when you quit. As long as we keep going forward and understand that sometimes things take a longer than when we would expect. And this is especially for young people, because we kind of have a Mac mentality that we want things to happen very fast. And sometimes things just take a lot longer to accomplish.
Yeah, what a wonderful, wonderful way to end this. I think all of your advice has been so helpful to so many on this call. I personally have just really enjoyed the last hour. I want to thank you again for being a part of this. And I think Natalie's going to pop back in and send us off. But Dolores, again, I want to, on behalf of all of us who have joined you today, I really want to express my sincere gratitude to you for all you've done.
If I could end with a chant, okay? And I don't know if people can unmute themselves or not, but I'd like to end my talks with 2 questions. And one question is, I ask the audience, who's got the power? And of course, the answer is, we've got the power. And then we say, what kind of power? And we say, people power. And in this case, we could say feminist power, okay? So anyway, I can ask the question, who's got the power? What kind of power?
Feminist power.
Yes, feminist power. And so are we going to use our power, to make the world a better place? We say, yes, we can. Or in Spanish, sí se puede.
Sí se puede. Thank you. We've got a lot of folks responding in the comments with your chant, Dolores. So thank you once again. Thank you so much. If anybody, Dolores, I encourage you to go to the comments. We've gotten so much love from folks today. Thank you so much for all that you do and for inspiring all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again for joining us today. Any of the books and resources that we talked about today are going to be included in a post-event email. Like I said, if you want to receive that post-event email, which will include information about the Dolores Huerta Foundation and the National Women's Hall of Fame, send us your email at admin@womenofthehall.org. Just mention that you are at the Brunch with Dolores Huerta, and we will get you signed up for our newsletter. And this project was made in part by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the Museum Associations of New York, as well as the support of our many 2021 and 2022 sponsors. And remember that even though Women's History Month is over, we can learn about women's history year-round. Here at the National Women's Hall of Fame, we aim to share incredible stories like Dolores's every single day. Join us tomorrow during the Week of Women to hear from 2015 inductee Jean Kilbourne, where she's going to teach all about advertising and how advertising has shaped our minds, has shaped many generations, and how she is aiming and has been for the last few decades and has changed the advertising industry and how it depicts women and how it's affected many generations to come. So please follow along at womenofthehall.org. And if you can, please donate so we can keep doing free programs like this if you liked what you saw today. And once again, thank you, Dolores, for joining us. And thank you all for coming and watching. So thank you and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.